Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Lemongrass Roots, where we talk about all things SAP.
My name is Eamonn O'Neill. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Lemongrass. Chris, you can introduce yourself now.
Yeah, thanks, Eamon. So I'm Chris Beard. I've got 20 years of SAP, so probably a decade less than Eamon. And I work in our solutions team. I'm privileged to be able to speak to customers every day and go and visit them and learn about their problems and talk to them about how Lemongrass might be able to help. So I have a really good overview, especially in EMEA, of the challenges customers are facing today with big data, AI, SAP, and topics around that, including cloud. Great. So Eamon, Sapphire is coming up fast. We're expecting big announcements around AI when we get there. Talk to me about what you're expecting from SAP, where you think SAP's AI is today, and what customers are feeling about it.
Sure. I think there's a very clear pattern across all customers that they really want to see this AI come into their businesses. I think most people get the point that embedded AI is a good idea. Putting the AI inside the business process is actually a very good idea. And I think they can see some use cases that are very compelling. Of course, SAP has been signaling this for quite a while, that they intended to invest heavily in AI. So we've seen over the last couple of years different solutions coming out from SAP, but they've been gathering pace. And we're expecting in Sapphire to see a dramatic increase in the amount of AI solutions or AI agents that are available from SAP. So I think there's a lot of excitement about what's going to come, and a lot of anticipation. And customers certainly want to get to there as quick as possible. But the flip side is certainly at the minute, a lot of customers who maybe aren't on S4 2025 or on RISE. And there's still quite a lot of customers on older versions that might not be able to get at those. They're a little concerned. They don't want to wait too much longer to get at this stuff. So of course, on one hand, it encourages people to do their upgrades and get to RISE. On the other hand, people are asking what can be done, where I am today. And the other pattern we're seeing there is that BTP is beginning to demonstrate its capability as the extension layer for AI. So where people can very quickly add in the AI capabilities via the AI hub into those frontier models into the business process of the existing systems. So we're seeing that there's almost like I wouldn't say quite a panic, but certainly an urgency from customers in getting AI into their business, and they will take it wherever they can find it. But they're really keen to go on this journey with SAP in the medium to long term.
I see that, and I speak to customers about how they're deploying AI in their business today, and I'm struck by the number of customers who do use AI in the business process, but as a spot solution that sits outside of their ERP system. So I was speaking to one of our large billion-dollar telecoms company the other day, one of our customers, and they were talking about how they have solutions for demand planning, for predictive maintenance, for all these things where AI is an obvious use case, but they sit outside the SAP system and outside SAP technology. And what they want to do now is exactly as you describe, use SAP's business technology platform, BTP, to be able to bring those into the SAP ecosystem and to manage and govern those AI solutions in a single platform.
Yeah, and I think look, AI can of course help across the enterprise, and I think it's incumbent on every team within the business to look for opportunities to deploy AI. What we're seeing in the SAP space specifically are some really compelling use cases, specifically around things like exception management, even in the BPO space, where companies today are spending quite a lot of money on armies of people doing tasks which do require a level of discretion, a level of subjectivity and decision making, which could be very, very hard to code or do RPA for, but it's perfectly suited to Gen AI. And we're starting to see that as being a real kind of quick ROI that CFOs are waking up to. And we find that around the exception management space, around SAP, there's quite a lot of exception management, and all of those become opportunities to deploy AI too. So even before you get to better planning or more efficient management of stock or inventory, there's some low-hanging fruit there, which we're seeing customers go after. But yeah, I mean, you'll see across the enterprise, AI will pop up in so many areas, even personal productivity. Those things are becoming table stakes now, where everybody's got some form of Copilot or Claude or something like that to help them. But that's almost the new reality. It's like giving people Excel or giving people a laptop. It's almost like a standard tool now is some form of a Copilot. But as I said, building that into the process can have some dramatic cost savings and quality improvements as well.
I know that I personally I use Excel quite a lot in my role, and having Copilot or Claude in Excel just makes everything so much faster and easier. And I can sort of leave it to go and do a problem for me while I go do some other work. It's amazing. It's so good. And I can see how having it embedded into your core ERP processes would offer very significant advantage. And I'm very excited for our customers to get there. I guess where I've seen us help customers is on the journey to that space, because I know that the SAP business AI requires you to be, on public cloud or RISE and be on a very latest version. I think 25 is the one where you get a lot of the AI features, right? So it's about taking the journey to that space in a way that's easier with maybe some of these newer technologies.
Well, yeah, I think you can. We talk about business agents there, exception management and other use cases where the business are using AI. But of course, we as an SAP team help a lot of SAP teams and customers complete transformations, and that could be moving from ECC to S4, moving from S4 2019 to 2025 or whatever it might be. And the big third pattern that we're seeing at the minute is that customers are getting quite frustrated with the effort and duration it's taking to make those transformations. Now, of course, we've all heard for many years that roughly around this time, 2026, 2027, there's going to be such a large demand for SAP consultants that it's going to be a constraining factor on people's ability to transform. Well, guess what? AI, of course, is helping there as well. So we're seeing transformation agents being a really big accelerator for this. Indeed, within Lemongrass ourselves, we've built some of those agents to help get customers, towards clean core, which of course is a very useful stepping stone into an overall AI strategy. But we see transformation agents popping up in a lot of areas. And really, the way to think of it is almost every single role on an SAP transformation will have an equivalent agent, which would, to some degree, will be a sidekick. I don't think many of them will be autonomous, but ultimately they will help a smaller number of people complete a transformation in a much faster period of time. So, for example, we've seen, I'd say over the last 5 weeks, I've seen 3 different customers say to us that they are either not going to start their S4 transformation or actually have paused their S4 transformation until they know they can leverage transformation agents and speed up the move towards S4. And part of the reason they've reached out to us is that we can help them with that. So yeah, I see it's not just the businesses transforming, it's the SAP teams like Lemongrass and like others that are going through or about to go through a dramatic reshaping. And again, all very much AI centric. But the good news is, it's not doom and gloom. As I mentioned earlier, the good news is people can do a lot more with these tools. So rather than it taking you 4 years to roll out S4, you should be able to do these in less than a year. And rather than taking, 6 weeks to do a test cycle, these things could be done with AI much, much faster in a number of days. So that's what we're seeing. For example, on the extensibility, the Z code or Z code side of things, we've seen the analysis and dispositioning, what should we do with these things, collapse from, in one case, from 13 months down to 3 months, and saving that customer, albeit a very large life science company, but saving them over $12 million in that effort. So again, massive collapse in time and cost, but also, interestingly, a huge improvement in quality. The ability to analyze with AI at scale shows a far better quality outcome than doing that with humans. So we're seeing really interesting results in the SAP transformation side of things as well. So yeah, that's the third big trend that we're seeing. And even I expect that SAP will make some announcements at Sapphire around other transformation agents. We've certainly worked with them on a couple of these ideas, and we know that there's going to be some announcements in that area coming up in May as well.
I think that's fascinating. And when I reflect on how AI has impacted the wider world of work, thinking more than just SAP, I think I'm right in saying there's no area of work that's been affected so dramatically as developers and code development. And I remember seeing a social media video from a developer who said he'd written more code in the last 3 months than he had done in a career of 20 years before. And I think that we've turned a corner now where a lot of developers had a culture of thinking AI is just an advanced autocomplete, or it's generating more work, or you remember it was banned from Stack Overflow, to a point where it's becoming genuinely useful, and people are now sharing tricks on how to get it to work. And they talk about it being addictive to use because sometimes it works really well and sometimes it doesn't, and they can't stop programming and things. So it doesn't surprise me that the impact in the SAP space is, of course, going to be first and most dramatic in the transformation area, the more technical area, and then, of course, more so in the business areas. More use cases are deployed and developed and delivered by SAP in a way that can be used by a broader range of customers, and of course, where the SAP solution isn't available, being deployed on BTP with the help of a partner.
And the interesting side effect of those improvements, and indeed, I think it was only yesterday, GitHub Copilot announced that it was going to change its pricing, because when it was launched originally, it was effectively an autocomplete for developers, but people are using it for obviously full end-to-end application build at this stage, and the pricing model doesn't reflect it, so they're having to change that. But the interesting side effect is that suddenly the focus now becomes, well, if the code's going to write something, how do you know the code is correct? In other words, the code writes itself, fair enough, but how do you know that that's what you need and what you want? And the whole area of guardrails has been around for a little while, but that's now beginning to grow into an overall concept of harnesses and harnessing. And harnesses are fundamentally just a series of controls that you have, a set of tools, obviously, and content that give you better visibility, better control over what the AI is doing. And this area is becoming really interesting because in many ways, it's just another continuation of what we've done in IT for many years. So for example, every agent needs to have an identity. An identity to most people in the business doesn't really mean much, but IT people recognize that concept straight away. Identities need access. Identities need joiners and leavers concepts. Agents will come and agents will go. So how do you make sure that they're all registered? How do you make sure that only the appropriate ones are actually active? And then, of course, agents need to be monitored, need to be, they'll consume a certain amount of spend. How do you make sure that the FinOps is controlled? How do you make sure the SecOps is controlled beyond just the access, but into other vulnerabilities that might be getting exploited or made available? And as you start to look at this whole subject, you realize that IT needs to build another layer of management for agents, very similar to what we've done for humans over the last 40 years. And of course, we can use the analog of humans. It's a perfect analog almost for a lot of this work. So we see a lot of the big companies like Microsoft and Google and Amazon and SAP as well, releasing their own harnesses. Now, interestingly, they're all a bit different. They all cover slightly different functionality. So one of the big conundrums is going to be for every company, well, which harness do I pick? And how do I complete the picture? Like, how do I fill in the gaps that maybe don't come with the standard product? So we're going to see a lot of evolution in the space of harnesses over the next few months and years, as people start to adopt not just SAP's agentic solutions, and whether those are standard ones or via BTP, so things you've built yourself. But inevitably, non-SAP agents are going to be available. Transformation agents are going to be available. How do you bring all of these into a control plane that makes it, visible and possible and ideally easy to manage? So anyway, very interesting topic that comes out of those efficiencies is that it really moves the focus to the next problem with AI writing code, which is how you control it all in the long run.
It's easy to forget that it's only been, I don't know. I mean, whenever you say harness in the world of AI, I don't think you could. Well, certainly what comes to me when you mention harness is, of course, OpenClaw, and it's easy to forget that that's been around for like 1 quarter, and the amount of change that's happened in that time, in not only, as you say, providing tools, which is mainly what OpenClaw did, so the AI can then enact and do things, but then to make that enterprise grade, and mentioning SecOps and FinOps security controls, finance control, making sure that you're doing it in such a way that it doesn't present a risk. Because of course, one of the first things that happened once OpenClaw was available is that 70% of the library of skills was full of malware, right? So it's about having an enterprise grade ability for AIs to enact things and make changes and really behave in, I suppose, an agentic way. Although that term seems to change meaning every few months.
But there's also there's a good debate on that too. In fact, we saw some really good examples inside Lemongrass where not everything has to be AI. And even though AI is easy, it's very easy to create something that's AI. It's actually relatively expensive to run. So, for example, one of our roles within Lemongrass is the project management office. So people who write status reports on a regular basis. Well, that's one of their activities, of course. So we thought that might be a nice role for an AI agent. So we built an AI agent, and it was able to reduce, of course, the cost of creating that dramatically, like by almost 90% or more. But it still was costing maybe $20 or whatever to write the report using AI. But then we realized, you know what, this isn't really doing much thinking. It's effectively doing the same sort of queries over and over again. That's actually far better in a deterministic solution like Python, which we just got it to write a Python script instead. And suddenly the cost collapsed to something like 8 cents every time it has to run. So now at scale, that makes a big difference. And again, this is just one of the new things that people are beginning to realize is that it's one thing to have agentic or AI-based solutions, but you can actually, you need to spend time reviewing those and determine where is the appropriate point to have the non-deterministic Gen AI task versus which ones are better as genuine kind of old style code, deterministic. And again, as soon as you decide that, it's not enough just to have a script. Again, you've got to look at the harness. What are your pipelines? How do you control that? How do you monitor it again? So AI isn't going. IT isn't going away here. IT is evolving, but AI is throwing up probably as many questions as it's answering. And which again, I go back to my earlier point. This isn't doom and gloom for IT teams. This is actually a massive evolution in what we're doing. But a lot of the lessons everybody knows are still applicable in the AI world. And I genuinely believe that we're going to see over the next 12 months, not just more change, we're going to see more opportunities for IT people to get involved in this. So yeah, that's the other thing I would say around FinOps specifically is don't forget deterministic code has got a very, very important place. Indeed, one of the things, again, this will date the video and everything, but we're still waiting for Mythos to be fully released, of course. And but what we're hearing is that it's a lot more expensive to run than even Opus 4.7. And we've noticed already the cost difference between 4.6 and 4.7. Mythos, of course, is going to be even more. I think we're not far off getting to a point where people are going to start getting a little concerned about just trying everything out on the latest AI model, because the bills are going to start racking up, and people need to be a little bit more discerning. So again, how do you control that? How do you decide what workload gets the good models versus the cheaper models, et cetera, et cetera? But I genuinely think that, and Mythos might be that tipping point when you get to a certain level of token scale, that suddenly the cost control is one of the major limitations you want to put on model choice.
It's like back in the day when you had to get computer time and it was a scarce resource, right? I guess when you're talking about 10 trillion parameters that you're running inference through, there's an inevitable cost to that. Anyway, yeah, no, fascinating conversation. I'm struck about the use for deterministic code. I couldn't agree more. I saw a fun thing on LinkedIn the other day. I don't know who to credit to. Apologies to the author, but they were talking about rebranding their procedural code as zero token agentic architecture and just renaming Bash as agent, and then yeah, which I thought was quite cute in a world where 87% of CFOs want AI enabled and deployed in their workforce, but only 11% have found a real use case. So,
Yeah.
Bridging that gap by finding a way to market your solution in the right way, I think was a fun little an aside. So talk to me about where, because everyone's on the AI bandwagon, right? Every company is talking about AI. Why are Lemongrass different? What do we do that isn't just the same as everyone else?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, in many ways, AI is just a fact of life now. It's a bit like IT. People getting excited about IT. Of course, everybody needs to get involved in IT, and everybody now needs to get involved in AI. This is, I mean, it can be a little tiring when everybody talks about AI because we've seen those hype cycles before, and often they settle down into a smaller number of stakeholders. But actually, I see AI being one of the biggest impacts of my lifetime, at least. But it's a good question. Why are Lemongrass a little different? I genuinely go back to what we've always tried to do in Lemongrass, which is we try to use technology to help with transformations. That's what we've always talked about. Back whether it's moving to hyperscaler, whether it's using automation to manage SAP on cloud, whether it's using automation to manage data platforms, and now the same, I guess, culture, I think suits perfectly into leveraging AI to both do the transformation of the systems, but also the transformation of the business. And I think there's real practical examples of that. I see within our AI team, the level of thinking, the level of capability in our team has blown me away. I mean, I'm always impressed with our technical team, but when I see what they've built and the way they think about it, I realize that it does take quite a while to start thinking this way in how to properly use AI. So it's not just about prompt engineering, which of course in itself is not trivial. There's also context engineering, which again is another discipline within the AI team. And then finally, there's the whole harness building. Within Lemongrass, we built a harness because we were quite early to market with our tooling, so we had to have some controls on it. And when we built a harness, but our team naturally did it because they think that way. And when we go to customers, what we're trying to say to them is, look, we can bring these skills to bear. How to not just spot a use case, but also how to really bring it to life in a safe way. But also what we've spotted is that we enjoy solving business problems. We enjoy getting business outcomes. We like to see the business smile when they see something in their hands. And ultimately, we've got a team of people that loves to accelerate the pace, likes to, we're not trying to become a 50,000 man company. We want to show people how to use technology in the business and drive dramatic outcomes. I mentioned the exception management just because some of the numbers I've seen on these are some of the biggest, change business cases I've ever seen. So I think, again, I think we're well positioned because we've got a lot of experience in all of the technical side of this, the automation, the cloud knowledge, the AI knowledge now, how to run all this technically, how to integrate BGP into that picture, how to keep it all secured, how to keep it all performant, and keep the cost down. But at the same time, we can see specifically for SAP customers at least a whole range of business use cases that they could be doing today, and inevitably some custom ones of their own which we can bring to life in weeks rather than months. So that's something that when we talk to customers, and certainly when I chat to our customers or even prospects, they're quite blown away with the capability we have in the company.
I think that's so true from a technical angle, from a customer perspective angle. The thing I would add to that is I don't think there are many companies out there that can point to enterprise-sized billion-dollar organizations where they've saved them huge amounts of money by using these AI solutions. So I'm thinking, for example, of the polymer manufacturer where we brought their documentation up to a higher standard to pass audit and saved them 6 months and way over €1 million as a small example, or what about the lawn care company we're about to start with on their S4 journey, where they'll radically accelerate the transformation, or maybe even the financial services hospitality company where we're deploying a novel business control tower, expect to save tens of millions for them. These are huge global organizations, and we can point to referenceable examples where we've deployed Gen AI to solve problems that have saved them millions and millions of dollars. And I don't know of other companies that have those examples right now.
Yeah, it's still early days, of course, and companies are finding their feet. But you're right. I mean, we ran to this AI challenge when we saw it because we're technical, we enjoy this stuff, and we're seeing, as you say, some of the real savings that it promises. But I see much bigger to come. I certainly, we mentioned the BPO side of things. I've mentioned it a couple of times. We have one customer who's expecting to reduce their BPO by 75% with AI, and that is going to save them billions. So when you get to that kind of number, then it's suddenly it's a whole other level of impact, but very, very achievable, and certainly something worth some effort to try and make achievable. That's what we're seeing coming down the horizon, not just, as it were, a couple of million here and there, but much, much bigger numbers. So yeah, I think it's you're building on the experience we've got, as you rightly point out. You learn from experience, of course. But building on that experience, I can see the impact that we can have with our customers as being, material and dramatic.
Brilliant. Thanks, Eamonn. So I guess no podcast will be complete without a bit of a look into the future. So if you think about the next 12 months, what are 3 things that we expect as being stuff our customers should be doing in the AI space, right? Everyone wants it, everyone wants to do things, but I think still there's a lack of general direction. What if you were running a major enterprise organization, you were CIO, and you wanted to find a real thing you could hang your coat on to show how well you deploy AI in the SAP space, what would you be doing?
So, we talk about identifying use cases. To me, there's an easy way to find the use case. What you want to do is look at where you're doing high volume of low complexity activities, and that's one area. And the second area is you look at likely low volume of high value activities, and those are 2 hunting grounds I would look at. And I go back one more time to exception management, but what I would be doing is straight away I would be looking at exception management, not just across, O2C and P2P, but supply chain, logistics, warehousing, all those areas. And then I would stand up a BTP team and I would say, get this up and running and go work with that business and see what you can pick off. Show them what it can do, and then just stay with them, work with them tightly to figure out how you're going to start to improve this. Now, of course, and one of the lessons, not just from early AI pilots that people made mistakes on, but people have made mistakes in this for many years, is with every technology change comes a people change. So you can't forget the fact that, you're changing some people's roles here. That maybe you're removing roles, who knows, but yeah, every change requires people to not just do something new, but stop doing what they were doing before. And I think that's one of the things that people missed with AI, with the early cycles, is you've got to employ just normal change management disciplines here. But if you do that, And you have a Tiger team working closely with those different sort of hunting grounds. Well, that's what I would certainly do. I would expect to see return this year. I would expect to see an ROI this year on that investment, and of course, every year thereafter it recurs. So yeah, that's what I'd absolutely nothing would stop me doing that over any other AI initiative that I can think of. I wouldn't train my own models. I wouldn't do any of that. Yes, give people a co-pilot. That's easy. I know it's not cheap necessarily, but that's an easy one, and it's very hard to show an ROI on that. It's just going to be efficiency and very difficult to measure individuals at that level. But when it comes to operational improvements, I think you should be shooting for an ROI this year, and there are definitely use cases around SAP customers that would achieve that.
Brilliant input, thank you. And so different from the answer that I hear everywhere else, which is, hey, let's create an avatar that focuses fronts our business and asks questions of all our different data pools, which for sure is an interesting use case. I've heard many customers say they struggle to produce ROI, and I think you're right. It's about putting your AI and BTP team next to your business and finding use cases that deliver tangible value and you can measure and track, right? Because that's what you want to show now. I think the time where we could have pilots and proofs of concepts and ideas that look cool is kind of behind us. And now it's about showing the hard dollars, right?
Yeah, and these are real, yeah, these are achievable and should be going after. I mean, don't get me wrong, the whole data inquiry and the ability to kind of, to query across multiple different data formats, etc., with natural language is really cool. And there's some, even within Lemongrass, there's a couple of areas that I really want to push in that space. So, it's not that there's no value in those, but as you say yourself, it's sometimes hard to get an ROI, like a tangible ROI. It's actually very easy to get an ROI on some of the exception management. These are bottom line numbers often that can be impacted. But again, it'll always be a mix in the long run. But if you ask about priority, yeah, go after the exception management around SAP.
Brilliant. Thanks, Eamonn. Really appreciate your time. Any final thoughts before we close?
No, I think I'm looking forward to Sapphire. I know I'll be there in Orlando. I think you and I are both going to be in Madrid. So
in Madrid, indeed.
Happy to chat to anybody who wants to pick our brain or maybe improve our thinking. Quite happy to listen as well. Other than that, I'm sure we'll reflect on this in a year's time and realize how much has changed in the next 12 months.
Brilliant. And it's my ambition to speak to everybody at Madrid, which I realize is an impossibility, but it's good to have goals. So I look forward to seeing you there if you go. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Eamonn.
Cheers. Thanks.